And so, our using of just two modes is relatively unique in the context of world music. However, we didn't originally do that either. Originally, we had also more modes than just the major and minor. It's just that over time, and this only gradually happened over time, we stopped using the majority of them. We refer to these as the church modes because the music we associate with it at this time in history is music of the Catholic Church of the medieval and Renaissance period in history, in the early Baroque period. So we refer to it as a church mode because at that time in Western European culture, all music other than pop or folk culture, the dancing music and so forth around the village fire, came out of the church. All intellectual music came out of the church, out of the monasteries. And so we associated this with the modes of this time with the churches, with the cathedrals, with the monastery choirs and so forth. And they became to be called church modes. Church modes actually derive from our musical tradition, which comes from Greece. In fact, all the musical traditions of the Mediterranean basin, that means Northern Africa, Egypt, the Middle East, all of Europe, and even moving into parts of moving towards India, originally was all influenced by the music of ancient Greece, the ancient Greece system. So you will also see these church modes referred to as the Greek modes. Now, originally we had 7 modes, one for each degree of our scale, and eventually we winnowed it down to the 2 we have now, the major and minor modes. But these modes always did exist, and are still used in music. And we're going to see how this happens, how they disappear in time, but eventually, through the history of music, re-enter into the modern repertoire of pitch material, going about the 20th century. They start coming back in. Now, in our system, we still tune the same. The best way to think about this, why the tuning is always the same, is think that every instrument could not change tune. That if you had a series of, say, wooden blocks that you were playing, like a xylophone, you can't change the tuning of those, can you? So you have to have uniform tuning. Same thing with, say, if you're making a harp or a lyre, a string instrument. It's probably unlikely you're going to be able to constantly, in an instrument that's not part of the Industrial Revolution, change those pitches. So they are set forever. They are set. So our tradition contains always the same order. Same order of pitches that we have now in our scales. They are always the same. That you have whole, half, whole, half, and just depends where you start is another orientation of that. So our modes are always the same pitch order of half steps and whole steps. What makes them different modes is where we begin. Do we begin on the first degree? Do we begin on the second degree, the third, the fourth, and so forth? And that makes the different modes where they are, where their tonic is. And so these traditions, these modes, where our system derives its 2 modes. And as I said, 2 of them, which we refer to in their Greek name, or their church mode name, is Aeolian and Ionian, are ones we still use, the major and minor mode. And during what we call the common practice period, which is the period of functional tonality, starting about 1600 to about 1900, they disappear from. They are the only 2 modes that are generally used. They return again in the 1900s and used as often as variations in the major and minor, and they come in heavily in jazz as a way of understanding how you relate to harmony in a new way of thinking in about the 1940s, when, as we say, jazz sat down and became an intellectual activity, not just dance music. These are then the 7 modes of the Western, the Greek or the church modes. We have first the Ionian, which starts unseen. The Ionian, which we also recognize as our major mode, right? That's our major mode. The second would be our Dorian, which would start in the D. The third one would be our Phrygian. The fourth would be our Lydian. The fifth would be our Mixolydian. The sixth would be our Aeolian, which we would associate with our natural minor. And lastly is our Locrian. technical purposes, until the 20th century, the low-created mode only existed in theory. No one used it. So we don't see the low-created mode in music at all until you start looking at music of the late 20th century, or late 19th century, early 20th century, and when jazz starts picking up on modes as a way of understanding relationship to harmony. So we have these different names, these different scales, each beginning on a different scale degree, thinking that whatever our musical instrument has a fixed set of pitches, and they are what would correspond to the ivory keys on a piano, or the plastic keys on a piano these days. And we simply, where we begin, makes the different modes. Now, what are the crazy names? The crazy names derive from their Greek bases. These are areas or cities within ancient Greece. Lydia was a city in a coastal area of what now is Turkey, which was part of the Greek world at that time. Phrygia is another area which is part of the what we would think of as part of the proper Greece these days. Aeolia also. Doria was the area around Athens. And Mixolydia was this area that was above what we would think towards the Black Sea. In that area. So these are reflected regions. And they gave these various modes regional names. In addition to having regional names so they could remember them, they also had a type of music you associated with it, an affect, a flavor of music. Depending on where they were from, they indicated what type of music you might hear at that moment. So if I said to you as in ancient Greece, and we're sitting around saying, let's jam a little bit, and I said, let's do it in the Dorian mode, you knew what type of music I was going to do. You know what melodies were associated with that, and what type of music that was going to be. In the case of Dorian music, it meant music that was intellectually pristine, stately, considered very beautiful. On the other hand, I said, let's do something in the Lydian mode, okay, let's break out the beer. This is fun time. We're going to have some fun here. This is when we're going to have music that's for celebration, for party time. It's going to be played probably on a very odd-looking instrument. We call it an aulus, which is a double reed instrument. You play two flutes simultaneously, two what look like oboes simultaneously. And it's probably music associated with drinking wine. And it's also going to be associated with the god Bacchus, who was the god of wine. Dorian would be associated with the god Apollo, the god of reason. So each of these had those associations, not just that it started in different places in a different order of pitches, but also that it had a different type of music, a different affect of music, and a different god associated with it. Now, even I don't remember them all, and that's not very important to us, but it's good to know that they had each a flavor. This does translate into our system, that throughout the common practice period, 1600 to 1900, usually key had also its affect. And we called it in Baroque time the doctrine of affections. Affection means what kind of mood does it associate? Be associated, for example, A major with music that's going to be royal. And music in F major was always going to be music of the hunt. So it's when, for example, Beethoven writes his music of the hunt, it's in the key of F major and the horns are playing. And so the same kind of thinking that certain scales are associated with certain music is still evident in the music that you're going to see historically up at least to 1900. Okay, so once again, our order of whole steps and half steps never changes in our system. You can think of it as we have this harp and we got to tune it before the performance. We might play all these modes and we can't retune it in the middle. It's just impossible before we had the Industrial Revolution and modern instruments. Any instrument was pretty much fixed tuned. And those are the two orders for our major and minor, as we know. In the case, though, of the Dorian and Lydian, it will, or the various other church modes, they will simply change place. The order will change place. So that in our Ionian mode, it's whole, half. And the Dorian mode is whole, half, whole. And here we pick this up because we hear the tonic all the time. Now, once we started having polyphony, it became common to say, let's do the Dorian mode. But now, because of the nature of the music, we need to do the more Dorian mode that starts in D. We need to do a D, to do an E. So we had to transpose. And so in the period starting 1200 or 1100, even before that, not only in the church music were you seeing these modes, but you were seeing transpositions of them in the music. Transposition, that's where we get our idea of accidental. So, for example, the choir master is trying to write a piece in the Dorian mode, but he's going to do it in E. He has to then transpose the exact order of whole steps and half steps to give us the Dorian mode on E. Here's the Dorian mode on D. Now I'm going to start in E. And I have to transpose a few notes. The whole step that is here in this part is not between E and F, so it has to be an F sharp. The half step between E and F has to be, the F sharp makes that a half step. Here we have a whole step, excuse me, here, but it was be C to B and C would be half steps, so we have to raise that as well. So you have to transpose a mode. So if you were saying you wanted to do piece of the Phrygian mode in G, you would have to transpose certain pitches. You would have to alter the pitches. And so it's important to know the order of those pitches. Now there's a hard way and an easy way to do this. And let me give you a really neat little method I think is going to be helpful. First off, you really should bother to memorize these. You've got exactly memorize exactly 6. We can dismiss the Locrian mode. It's not that important. It's theoretical. So we already know what the Ionian and the Aeolian are, do we not? So we're down to 4. Here's some easy ways to remember these and make it really easy. Take a look at the Dorian mode. Look at the Dorian mode. When you look at that, think of D as our tonic. Think of D major or D minor. Which does it resemble more, D major or D minor? D minor, why? It's just one flat difference, right? And so, what is the difference between D minor and D Dorian? The sixth. Our 6th degree, our submediate, is a step higher, right? So this is how I can remember. The Dorian is my minor mode with a raised 6th degree. So let's try this out. Let's see how to remember this. Let's do a Dorian starting on F. Dorian on F. First off, I'm going to think of an F minor, so I'm going to okay, so that's F minor. Now, what do I have to do to make this Dorian?
Gotta raise the D.
Raise the, which degree?
6.
The 6th degree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. D flat becomes D natural. And I have the Dorian. So it's not nearly as hard. Excuse me. And your ears can tell it's the same mode, right? So, using this method, I associate whichever mode I'm using with the closest major or minor and remember the differences of that. Dorian mode, it's the minor mode with a raised 6th degree. Our Phrygian mode, taking keys, since we started E in its natural state, in its natural state, you can think of keys of E major or E minor. Which do you think it's closer to?
E minor.
E minor. What is the difference? E minor has an F sharp, right?
Yeah.
And E minor has an F sharp. Oh, I'm sorry, I was saying actually it's an F sharp, and here we have an F natural. So what is the difference?
Raise.
Okay, so the other way around, we have a lower 2nd degree. So let's try now making a Phrygian scale in G, starting in G. So first I'm going to write out G minor. Okay, and now what do I have to do?
Lower
Lower the 2nd degree. A becomes A flat. Phrygian. That's on there, and on the original scale, now starting on G. And you can see how interesting that can be to your ear. Also hear that, our ears hear that it's exotic now, and it can be very, very powerful as we use it. Take a look at the next one. Our Lydian starts in F. Is that closer to F major or F minor?
F major.
And what is the difference?
B flat.
B flat. So that's the 4th degree is
Raise.
raised. Okay, let's do then a Lydian starting on B flat. First out, I'll write out B flat major. B flat major. I'm having a break. Oh, that's right. I'm right. It's important. All right. And then I have to raise the 4th degree. So what happens? E flat becomes E natural. Our Lydian. And then on B flat. That of our mixolydian. Is that closer to G major or G minor?
G minor.
Major.
What's the difference?
Which one you said?
Yeah, sure.
Right. And those of you in jazz know the mixolydian scale very well, don't you? Yeah. So it's got a flatted 7th degree. Let's do a mixolydian scale then, starting on A flat. Do A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat, and what do I do then? I lower the 7th degree, right? So G becomes G flat. Here it is in its original. And now it is on A flat. That's all right. Okay. So that is the easiest remedy. Low reading mode, as I said, for now we just leave it alone because it's theoretical until we get into jazz and into what's called impressionistic music, which you'll see a little bit of at the end of next year at this time. So those are our basic church modes. These are the ones that existed, and their transpositions are important to know as well. Now this is leading us to discuss transposition in general, so it's good to get an experience of doing this right now. And then we'll move on to transposing for instruments. Yes?
So the mixolydian was a raised 7th degree from...
Right, so I would think the other way around. I would think the other way around, and I'll go through these systematic.
Oh.
The Ionian, no change, right?
Right.
Just the major scale. The Aeolian, just natural minor scale.
Right.
The Dorian is my minor scale with a raised 6th degree. My Phrygian is my minor scale, my natural minor scale, with a lowered 2nd degree. My Lydian is a major scale with a raised 4th degree, and my Mixolydian is a major scale with a lowered 7th degree. Remember it that way, it's very easy. And also when you have to use, so how many here are jazz stage majors? You're going to get, this is what improv is about. You have to know these scales backwards and forwards and be able to transpose them in any key. So this is the head start of this. So you get used to, it also gets us used to the idea of transposing. The very little music you're going to see in your future is going to be always not in the key you get to play it in. You're going to have to transpose it. If you're playing for instruments, you're writing for instruments, you're going to have to transpose to the instruments. If you're reading a part that's transposed, you're going to have to learn how to transpose in the direction. So this will get us started. We've got lots of time for a change, so let's divide up in groups. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. All right, 1's here, 2's here.
Great.
One's over
I've never had to like be right for great. I don't know